Everyone expected the stock market to keep rising. In the late 1920s, optimism was everywhere. In offices, on main streets, in every new car on the road. By August 1929, the Dow Jones Industrial Average had climbed six-fold from earlier years. Investors thought, this time is different. The idea of a permanently high plateau for stock prices became common. But beneath the surface, things were unstable. Factories were overproducing. Farms were in trouble. Borrowing was rampant. This is where our story begins, just before the walls start to crack. The warning signs were subtle, then dramatic. In September and early October 1929, stocks began to tremble. Prices wavered. Confidence wobbled. Investors who had bought on margin, borrowed money to buy stocks, were suddenly exposed. When prices dipped, they faced large losses. Some banks tried to stem the panic. Others simply watched. But the faith that the boom would carry on was strong. Then came the week everyone remembers. On Thursday, October 24th, 1929, known as Black Thursday, panic began in earnest. The market opened sharply lower. Millions of shares changed hands, and the crowd sensed the crack. Then on Monday, October 28th, the index plunged nearly 13%. And finally, on Tuesday, October 29, Black Tuesday, with roughly 16 million shares traded, the fall became a rout. Here's what investors actually did in those final hours. They tried to sell before others did. They drained savings. They dumped stocks in a wave of fear. They ignored the possibility that the boom might really be over, because what they believed would last forever, their profits, their youth, their chance to ride the wave, was suddenly vanishing. Some investors sensed trouble. They started to reduce leverage, move into cash, or take profits. But most stayed in, believing in its continuation. At the same time, many banks and brokers quietly supported key stocks to stop the slide. But the underlying pressure was too great. In that moment, psychology became as powerful as economics. Fear and hope collided. The rush to sell became a race. Why does this matter now? Because history doesn't repeat exactly, but it rhymes. Just like 1929, today's markets carry high valuations, mounting debt, heavy speculation, and strong belief. The mechanism is different. The names are different. The technology is different. But the emotional foundation is the same. When investors believe the market can't fall, that belief itself becomes part of the risk. What triggered the collapse? The slide, the margin calls, the liquidations, the loss of confidence. In 1929, once the wave turned, the drop accelerated. Stocks declined dramatically. Banks failed, savings disappeared. The ripple turned into the Great Depression. The crash did not just destroy portfolios. It changed the world. The noise of the market had become a song, fast, thrilling, addictive. Every ring of the trading bell felt like victory. But that week, something changed in the rhythm. The floor grew quieter. The smiles faded. Brokers who once shouted in joy now whispered in fear. No one said it aloud, but everyone felt it. The music was ending. People began to sell, not because they needed to, but because others were. And like dominoes, fear started falling faster than any price tag could keep up with. It wasn't numbers anymore. It was emotion. It was the sound of confidence collapsing. The panic didn't arrive all at once. It crept in. One rumor, one whisper, one nervous glance at a ticker tape. Then came the rush. Crowds flooded the streets outside the exchanges, watching numbers disappear like smoke. Rich men lost fortunes before lunch. Clerks tore up papers. Some refused to believe what they were seeing. They said, "It's just a dip." But it wasn't. It was the end of a dream built on borrowed money and blind faith. The market didn't just fall, it shattered. And when it did, silence took over the sound of chaos. Every boom since then has carried the ghost of 1929. Every time the market rises too fast, that whisper returns. Remember last time? But humans forget faster than they learn. We see growth and call it destiny. We see credit and call it freedom. We build the same illusions, just with new technology and new names. It's not history repeating, it's behavior returning in disguise. The ghost doesn't haunt markets. It haunts people, their greed, their confidence, their belief that this time is different. The truth about financial history is that it's never about money. It's about emotion dressed as logic. Fear and greed pretending to be analysis. Every cycle begins with hope, grows with belief, and ends with denial. And somewhere in that circle, people convince themselves they're smarter than the past. But the market doesn't care about intelligence. It only listens to behavior, and behavior rarely changes. It just finds new reasons to make the same mistakes. Look around today. The charts are digital. The trades are instant. The greed is timeless. Investors still chase the next big thing. Governments still promise control. And ordinary people still believe they'll know when it's time to get out. But markets never warn politely. They collapse suddenly, in silence, and then all at once. We are not smarter than 1929. We are just better at pretending. If the 1929 crash taught anything, it's that the fall isn't the problem. The belief that it can't happen is. Every generation must learn the same truth the hard way. Prosperity is fragile when built on denial. It's not the charts that repeat, it's the people behind them. Different names, same emotions. Different tools, same mistakes. And the more we forget that, the closer we get to learning it again. When the dust finally settled in 1929, people didn't know what to do next. The tickers stopped spinning, the brokers went home, the banks closed their doors, and silence filled the streets where money once screamed. Some tried to rebuild. Some gave up. But most just stood there, stunned, realizing how fast everything can vanish when it's built on belief. The world learned that wealth wasn't real until it could survive a storm. Everything else was just a reflection on a fragile glass screen. The years after the crash weren't just about recovery. They were about denial. People didn't want to admit what had happened. They blamed the market, the banks, the rumors, everything but themselves. But the truth was simpler. It wasn't one person's fault. It was everyone's silence when the signs were loudest. Denial is always more comfortable than change, and that's why every collapse feels like a surprise, even when it shouldn't. Time, somehow, has a way of making pain look smaller. People began to believe again. New businesses opened, new investors appeared, and the market started to breathe again. But it wasn't the same breath. It was cautious, shallow, measured. The fear never really left. It just learned how to hide behind optimism. That's how recovery always begins. Not with confidence, but with exhaustion. Because after panic, even normal feels like hope.
Out of the ruins came a new generation. Young investors, dreamers, and thinkers who had seen the old world crumble. They didn't want to repeat history, but they also didn't want to live in fear. So they built again, slower, smarter, with scars that never fully healed. They built systems to protect the next generation, but in doing so, they built walls too. Walls of control, of regulation, of illusion, believing they could outsmart the cycle instead of respecting it. The result wasn't stability, it was a controlled illusion of it. As decades passed, the same rhythm returned. Confidence, growth, excess, collapse, different eras, different faces, same mistakes. Because people change clothes, not instincts. Each boom dresses differently, sometimes in technology, sometimes in housing, sometimes in promises. But beneath it all lies the same heartbeat, the need to believe that risk can be eliminated, that chaos can be managed. And every time someone says, it's different, now, the echo of 1929 smiles quietly in the background. Today's world moves faster, numbers blink in real time, and screens replace trading floors. But the illusion has evolved. It's cleaner, quieter, digital. We don't see the crowds anymore. We see green and red lines moving on our phones. and think that means we're in control. But the market still feeds on the same fuel, emotion disguised as strategy. The tools have changed, human nature hasn't. It's just that our fears now come with notifications. Governments learned something from 1929. Never let panic spread too far, so they created ways to stop it: money printing, liquidity, intervention. It worked, but only on the surface, because every system built to prevent collapse also prevents truth. Artificial calm is still an illusion, just more elegant. And every illusion demands a price. You can't keep fear away forever. You can only borrow confidence until it expires. Every investor believes they control their fate, but markets are built to remind them otherwise. There's always something unseen, an invisible hand guiding the fall, an unspoken rule that balance must return. No matter how advanced we become, no algorithm can erase human nature. Every bubble begins with belief, and every crash begins with doubt. The rest is just timing. Somewhere in the archives, there are photos of that October day in 1929. Faces frozen in disbelief, men clutching their hats, papers flying through the air. They look old now, distant, almost unreal. But every time the market shakes today, those same faces return, just on different screens, under different names. It's proof that memory isn't lost, it's ignored. And history doesn't punish forgetfulness, it replaces it with repetition. The cycle continues, quietly, endlessly. Boom, belief, denial, collapse. Then silence. And from silence, new hope. The next chapter is already being written, in credit cards, in startups, in the promise that this time we're smarter. But the truth remains, the market isn't a monster, it's a mirror. It shows us who we are when no one's watching. And until that reflection changes, history will keep watching, patiently waiting for the next echo of 1929.